he told me timing is everything. And a couple of years ago, when I was looking for a new venture, I called him when he was conducting the TSO, the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, and a friendship came out of there, and so many ideas. And for the first time, I'm going to show you a little bit that came from this relationship that I've had with Kristjan Järvi.
Inspiration is all around us, actually. Look, it depends on what you see in everything. Everything's changing all the time. The only thing that we can be certain of is change. Actually, a lot of people ask me, hey, listen, are you crazy? Actually, I think we're all crazy, but we are taught not to show it. So, show more of the crazy, please.
Kristjan, ele era aquela mente genial da família.
He's really different from all the others, you know.
I mean, he's a force of nature. When he's got an idea, it's, you know, he's going for it.
He can fit the model of a classical conductor if he wanted to, but he doesn't want to. He's much more than that.
Every single person that you see on the street is my audience.
It's I won't spend more time introducing him because he's here with us. So, Kristjan, welcome and thank you very, very much for joining us. The timing, as you say, is right.
Yeah, like timing is everything, like you just said.
And you're joining us today from. Sorry.
It's very nice to be here on Symmetrica.
I really appreciate it.
MusiCafe.
The
MusiCafe. I know that you're missing another C there, but if you actually say it in Estonian, MusiCafe, it means kiss cafe. Because musi in Estonian, kiss. So you did good.
I didn't know that. It's great. Last time we saw each other was in Frankfurt. You were performing there at the old Opera House. But we've seen each other over the years since I first saw you conducting, because we never met there in Sao Paulo. You conducted the great orchestra of Sao Paulo, then you conducted here. You've been a conductor like everywhere in the world, and I want to go back a little bit, and then we'll go to everything else we have to talk about. But you come from an incredibly musical family. Your dad, of course, fantastic conductor. Paavo, your brother, your sister is a flute player. But not everybody jumps straight into music just because your family is musical. What has been going on your mind since you were a kid that you actually decided to be a musician?
It was a little bit kind of, I would say I went with the flow, and the flow was quite remarkably strong in the direction of becoming a conductor. And I mean, I was kind of scared of it, and at the same time I was in awe of it. I thought that it's not only very cool, and I understood actually what my father was doing, and how my brother wanted to follow in his footsteps. And it also kind of intimidated me and scared me. So I was at one point kind of on a crossroads, and I thought that perhaps, that's kind of the end of the line. Let them handle that part of the trade, so to say. And I can do something else, because look, a lot of different things interested me and still do, from polydimensional physics and astronomy to world affairs, so it's to foreign relations and stuff like this. And I also really loved stuff like hip hop music. So I thought, well, if music at all, maybe I'd go into hip hop and become kind of a hip hop producer or something. And so none of that really happened. But I was on the cusp of actually a lot of those things. And weirdly enough, now that I see what I'm doing, actually, I'm doing kind of all of those things, but in a completely different way, through a different medium and through a completely unexpected platform. So it is actually innately a realization of everything that I wanted, but definitely not a conscious way of achieving it. So that's pretty much sums it up. If
Did
you
you
want to
start?
get nitty gritty, I can tell you details too.
No, I want to start. Like, did you start as I want to be a conductor? Was that the original thought?
No, and not at all. I didn't want to become a conductor. As I said, it intimidated me. Although I thought it was very cool and kind of I was in awe of it. I actually was a pianist at first, and then after that, well, even becoming a pianist, and when I was at that crossroads, deciding whether I should even go into music and studying seriously, like on a college level. Even then, I had doubts, and my piano teacher at the time, Nina Svetlanova, said, "No, you're going to audition for Manhattan School of Music, right? That's what you're going to do." And I said, "Well, uh, kind of maybe not, but since you ask, okay." And she said, "Look, if you get in, then we can decide then." And so obviously, after I got in, then we did decide then, and she decided kind of for me that I'm going to come and study with her, and but I can tell you, um, it was kind of a fateful moment where I didn't really have much decision making power, and I'm glad the decision was actually made for me by her, because I consider her basically the one pillar of my uh, foundation as a human being. I mean, she basically taught me everything, guided me, and was basically the reason why finally I became a conductor. Because I told her, "Listen, piano's really not. I mean, I don't have the patience to, to practice in a practice room for 9 hours a day. That's not my idea of a good time. And and so, and she said, don't worry. We're gonna learn harmony, orchestration. We're gonna learn what real technique is about." And through that process of being in Manhattan School of Music, I met some of my best friends and collaborators, even until now. Gene Pritzker, who's a wonderful composer, and all sorts of things that he did back then are even modern now. Um, Putting all sorts of rap and hip hop into chamber music and orchestral compositions. I mean, he's really one of a kind. Then Charles Coleman, who's just one of the most romantic and kind of, I would say, nostalgic men of the American classical era. Wants to kind of really maintain that Barber, Ives, Copeland, Leonard Bernstein legacy in American music, and actually he very much succeeds, even though he has a very uh, personal and very cool harmonic and tonal language himself. And we created Absolute Ensemble with these guys. I mean, basically, Absolute Ensemble became this um, kind of a gang of people who kind of believed in the same thing, and it wasn't important if you if you actually knew how to play an instrument or not. If you liked the idea, we found something for you to do. It was kind of really kind of a conceptual ensemble where it was based on friendship, and kind of we wanted to write our own stuff, arrange our own stuff, play written music, improvise, kind of a Renaissance to rock type of ensemble. And Gene was really into Frank Zappa and like Black Sabbath and stuff like that. So we were doing everything from like Bach to Frank Zappa and stuff, and then these conceptual concerts kind of formed out of that, and finally when it was time to kind of move on, and I went to University of Michigan to study conducting. After that, I kind of find myself that at a situation where I hadn't really ever studied conductor, but I had my own ensemble and I was constantly surrounded by conducting. And then when I went to University of Michigan, then I actually studied for real, and I was like, wow, this is actually really great. And from there, I got this job when Isabella Salon called me and asked me to audition for Los Angeles Philharmonic as an assistant conductor to him. And so again there I kind of got the job, and so I kind of then decided that I'm going to become a serious conductor, and for the past 20 years I've become a serious conductor, you know. And that was kind of it wasn't a conscious decision. It was more kind of moments of being guided by certain forces, which which actually I didn't even really understand or acknowledge until now. And I'm somehow very happy that I've taken the road that I have been given, so to say.
So before you go to that, and I want to get one thing completely out of the way, because I interviewed Dudana, who played in that concert, and I interviewed her for Music Makers. And one of the questions that I asked her, very seriously, of course, because I need to show that I know something about music, I told her, what kind of pressure must Kristjan be under, because you come from such a prominent family of conductors? And she said, you know what? There's no pressure, because he's like, there's no other like Kristjan Järvi. He's so completely unique, and I want to say that right off the bat, because not only you're a conductor, but your career has not been, or is not going towards conducting the big orchestras, which you have done. You've conducted, Leipzig, and you've conducted in Estonia, and you've conducted obviously in the U.S., and all of these orchestras that have invited you to conduct. But your relationship with composing and performing is perhaps stronger than the conducting. I'm not taking anything away from the conducting. I'm adding to on top of it.
No, I think, look, conducting is a certain art form, and I think it's a very very important art form from a time when music was being performed with big groups, where more was really more, where big was good.
Big.
Let's put 1,000 people on stage and let's get a conductor so that he can coordinate us. And now it's actually not so much from the perspective of being the coordinator of music and kind of keeping things together, but it's actually a lot of people and great conductors have refined the level of interpretation and skill that a conductor technically must have in order to make a real artistic statement, not verbally through rehearsals, but actually through nuances and movements, which are reflected in his mimicry and his technical capacity to convey emotion. And it's basically that. So emotion has a million different gradients, right? From the most pitiful to the most exuberant and exultative joy. If you can, within the course of actually kind of keeping the flow, keeping the pace, not only downgrading everything to kind of a speed where it's understandable and manageable for everybody to kind of swallow, so to say, but actually take the risks and have really the storytelling quality, whether it's a Beethoven symphony or Mozart piano concerto, a Bach cantata, or let's say Jesus Christ Superstar, or Bernstein Mass, or something like Mahler 8. And I think there's a lot of confusion about actually what conducting is, and what allows you to stand on the box and what actually is accepted in terms of the industry of music, which is actually a very small industry. I mean, it's like 0.1% of classical music industry is, like 0.1% of the music industry, and but it is a very highly respected and esteemed industry, and I think that it's not that it has had its heyday, but it is um, it is a kind of a boutique field where so-called experts are are and connoisseurs and the critics of connoisseurs and the connoisseurs of critics and managers who manage the various flows of information are actually more important sometimes than the music itself. And I'm not saying that this isn't happening in other businesses as well, but you see it more blatantly in classical music field, and I think that um, uh, it, I know that conducting for me is a very specific uh, form of almost like metaphysical communication, which requires a huge amount of skill and a huge amount of technique. And not many people think that it really is so. So um, I don't know what they think, and frankly, that's none of my business what other people think. But but I
I,
think that but I think that it's clear now what I think.
I've seen you conduct everything from from chamber orchestras to the Sinfonia in Berlin to ensemble, absolute ensemble, like everything. And the one thing that attracted me to you the first time I saw you is like the amount of energy you put into this in the conducting business. Um, you jump all over the place. The musicians in all the orchestras really like you because of the energy you project, and I guess they give you everything they can every time.
Well,
Um,
there's. I have to jump in there for a second because I mean, jumping around is one thing, but actually, sometimes people don't understand why do you need all that stuff, Because in fact, I feel like I want more. I want more, which I am not receiving, and not because they don't want to give it to me, but actually that the whole element of uh, the orchestra traditionally being a kind of a static animal, sitting down, kind of fulfilling their part in the clockwork that is an orchestra, is just somehow. Um, uh, I I would tell you verbally what I want if it existed. Actually, what has happened is what's going on with the Baltic Sea Philharmonic now, and there I can get more, and it's not because they're better, it's because they have a completely different uh, set of rules and skills that they operate by. They have taken everything what they've learned in their academies and conservatories and colleges and what have you. They know the repertoire. They a lot of them play in, very high standard symphony orchestras, but they also want more. And when I actually say more, I mean they uh, can't actually. I would say in many places really express themselves because the standardization process in the auditions and the way we play and the way we act is basically let's create a beautiful container and let's put everybody in that container, but you cannot come out of that container. You should kind of remain within the container, make music within that container, and then you're kind of under control and contained. uh, for me, it's important for every single musician to be the soloist, to be the form of expression for themselves, and use their own innate intelligence to know what is that point which is too much for them individually. And when I give now some kind of cues or ask for Baltic Sea Film to do basically whatever I ask them, of course I have to ask for it with my hands and fingers and my expressions. They do it and do it so like with such kind of understanding and commitment that it's scary. I'm almost like kind of uh, um, have been spoiled by having an orchestra which, yes, at first went through a process of, we were a youth orchestra 10 years ago, now we're much older, so we're Baltic Sea Philharmonic and not Baltic Sea Youth Philharmonic like we were. We started standing up, playing standing up, which actually changed our sound immensely. Then I introduced lighting, and people said, hey, listen, this is pretty cool, but don't go too crazy with the lighting, and of course I did. But I choreographed it and created these kind of conceptual set lists, which really had ebbs and flows and told a story. And people said, hey, listen, we can't see our music, this is not really cool like this, And I said, okay, well, let's start memorizing. And now we're memorizing, full concert programs, and not only one, but actually a few, and we're that repertoire is growing. So besides that, now we've actually, in Corona times, keep on innovating, and now we've started this musical chain project, which is actually of kind of orchestra, which is going to band, and a conductor that's actually going toward more producing, and we're creating new works together and rewriting classical compositions. Recently, we just published a thing which was based on Grieg's Morning Mood, but now it's retooled as Midnight Mood. I rewrote it, but using all of the home recorded lines from the various musicians in my orchestras, not orchestras, plural, but in Baltic Sea Philharmonic. They sent me all the tracks. Then I rearranged them, I rewrote them, and we published it as Midnight Mood based on Morning Mood, Edvard Grieg. A completely new take on a classical favorite. So I mean, this is kind of my world of constantly innovating, and now I have this kind of gang to do it. Again, much bigger form of absolute ensemble, in fact.
Well, Absolute Ensemble is like such a collection of fantastic musicians. I mean, you got David on the percussions and Matthew on the bass, like world class musicians just working with you in specific projects. I want to show a clip of the Baltic Sea Philharmonic so the viewers can see a little bit of what you've been doing lately with them. But I have to mention before that I saw you conducting one piece that is perhaps the most known symphony in the world, Beethoven Fifth. You did it with MDR, and the rehearsal was in Leipzig. I have to say that you push yourself a little down, because I saw you asking those musicians in Leipzig, like very, classical musicians. I said, piccolo, I want piccolo like piccolo, and I want it like this. Like your expression is really pulling the music out of them, and I'm so happy we have it in camera. But let's go to see a little bit of Baltic Sea Philharmonic and the projects you've been doing lately.
I breathe in hard, don't speak, 'cause it's like a bitter pill. You blow my mind, you make my heart beat. The king's a clown. No one is laughing, it's not a drill. Don't look outside, the world is ending. Faster, 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 faster. The echoes of that news ring loud. No sound can ever drown me out. It breaks my heart in two It breaks my heart in two. A million pieces. If it's gonna break me, won't you let me go? Leave it till the morning, I don't wanna know. It breaks my heart in two.
So this is obviously Bastille, and it's not Bastille with orchestra. This is really Baltic Sea and him together, and of course you, because you put this thing together. And this is the kind of project where you do like a complete mixture of modern and classical. You meld everything together and create something that is so new.
Well, look, I mean, you said something right before you showed that clip, and I'm glad you actually mentioned Beethoven 5. Because, look, Beethoven 5 is one of those monumental pieces that people think that you can't touch. Beethoven 5 is actually one of those pieces that you can't touch, and we should all be able to touch and retouch, in fact. And we are actually doing a rewritten of Beethoven 5 right now, as well, not as we speak, but in this particular time frame with Baltic Sea Philharmonic. But we are doing it with the mindset of having complete respect and love for a band like Bastille. And the reason why we do stuff like reorchestrated by Bastille is because these are some of the most highly skilled, fantastic musicians, which I consider probably some of the greatest form of chamber music that has ever been done. Yes, the means have changed. We have electricity. We have, maybe we can scoff at it and say, like, this isn't this. What are you saying? Like, this isn't on the level of Beethoven. This is completely ridiculous for you to even mention that. That's a subjective opinion that is completely okay for anybody to make, and actually everybody should express themselves exactly the way that they want. And if somebody thinks that way, that's fantastic. But having been kind of a person who in a way grew up loving Weather Report and Joe Zawinul being one of my complete 100% mentors, I cannot really agree with that type of opinion, because somebody like Joe Zawinul is like Brahms to me. I mean, he is such an inventor. He's so absolutely disciplined. He has the greatest taste in the world. He will be remembered forever, just like any of those great classical masters, Wagner, Rachmaninoff, Stravinsky, you name it. And most of those people were not really having the kind of most smoothest ride when they were alive. I can't say that Beethoven was really, digging his life when he was writing all those compositions. I mean, a lot of these pieces are protest to something. They're an emotional outcry. What do you think Moonlight Sonata is? I mean, this is an emotional outcry. It's not something that resonates differently than, for example, for me, something like Keen's Hamburg song. I mean, if people don't know Keen's Hamburg song, go and listen to it. It has just the most fantastic and very similar emotional playing as Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. And a lot of people maybe who are listening to this don't know who Keen is, but it's one of the best pop rock bands utilizing piano that has ever come to be on this planet. So for me, taking Joe Zawinul as an example, who was the biggest fusion artist, I can't say that there are really categories in music. There is inventiveness in music, there's love in music, there is passion in music, there is skill in music, there's using your ears in music, there's timing in music, there's rhythm in music, there's groove in music, there's phrasing, there's all of those things, and they apply to all music. Yes, there's a lot of really mediocre stuff out there, And like when people say crossover, I don't know where I'm crossing from over into what, because actually I don't really see a difference between something as genius as Handel's water music and why does Dion use Rachmaninoff's second movement of the second piano concerto as in one of her most well-known pop songs? I mean, it's there's a reason, because it evokes emotion. It's an incredible melody, and it's written so well. And then when I say something like that, this is like, wait, Rachmaninoff wrote that? Yeah, Rachmaninoff wrote that. And Celine Dion, she recognizes that this is really, really great stuff.
There is a big art in reinterpreting music, and you've done some fantastic work. I mean, you mentioned Handel, water music, but when Philip Glass, he's done Waterworks or Aquas de Amazonia, and you reinterpreted the whole thing and made it really orchestral and made something completely different out of it, keeping to what I think he was thinking. Really fantastic. You've worked with Stephen Reich on his own music. You've worked with Max Richter also on his own music, like the top contemporary musicians. So the question that we've discussed many, many times and we never find an answer, Kristjan Järvi, is what...
You can't forget Arvo Pärt. You can't forget Arvo Pärt.
Of course, he's family friend.
He's not only that, but he's a real inspiration, actually. Not only to me personally, but also I think to the whole world, in fact. And it's because he chose his own way.
So you're close to all of these composers. You conduct, you compose your own works, which is really nice. Songs, your piece of Songs of New York, which is unbelievable. So the question again is, what is Kristjan Järvi? We've never gotten an answer. We've never found it together. Because yes, you're a conductor and yes, you're a composer, but overall, what is Kristjan?
Well, look,
who is Kristjan Järvi?
There's I would say I'm an expressionist. I think, look, if you're a creative person and you want to do something, then you have to express yourself, and not be able to express yourself is one of the, and thinking actually that you're not allowed to express yourself, or you can't express yourself, is I think, I can't even imagine that. That is something that is seen on every level of society. I mean, why do we have kind of people sometimes express themselves in very different ways, and I'm sorry for that, actually. That we have to go on the street and burns things. That's. I would rather write a song. I would rather write a poem. I'd rather write a book or a play or maybe create a community of people who are maybe the nerve center of something that other people can attach themselves to and create together. To create a better world is actually much more important than protest the things that you don't like. So, I mean, if you want to protest for real, go and create the world that you want to live in. That's kind of what I'm thinking all the time. But of course, people get emotional and people get angry, etc. But I mean, don't get angry. Just go and do something. Get your gang together. One of the things that Tom Tykwer said to me, one of my favorite movie directors and producers, and we've worked on several things together, like Babylon Berlin, most recently, a very fantastic movie series which is filmed like film, and it's about Berlin in the late 1920s before the Third Reich. And it is incredibly fascinating, not only what the storylines are, but actually he's telling the story of everybody who, in a way, is muffled in one way or another from telling their own story, from creating, from being, from actually expressing the true potential of us humans. As a form of nature on this planet, we are actually here to express ourselves. But to express ourselves as one human entity. Not that, look, just think about our body, it's not like sometimes my heart expresses myself and then my liver the next day and, then my stomach. I mean, it happens sometimes, but then usually something's wrong. Usually then you're having a heart attack or, liver cirrhosis or you've got a bad stomach or something like that. But when everything is working in symbiosis, actually our human organism together can create exactly what we wonder even up until now is, what are those pyramids in Egypt? How can humans do that? I mean, how was that created? Wow, right? Well, if we can do that, I think we can do pretty much anything. And it requires actually coming together of focused energies and being completely aware that protesting is completely fine, but actually protest yourself into creation. And I think that's exactly what Wagner did. That's exactly what Bruce Springsteen did. I mean, that's what Jimi Hendrix did. That's what all of these guys like Jim Morrison, like Doors did. Why are we talking about them? Why are we not talking about all the guys who did everything correctly? Actually, they put certain things in motion, which we are still talking about now, and we uphold them to the highest standards, although at their own time they weren't upheld to the highest standard. They had to deal with the same politics, the same issues of kind of the this inadequacies of our human state. Where we're jealous of each other, and or one has to be richer than the other, and we somehow get so bogged down in this human construction of things, and we believe it too, that people are personally attacking me. Yes, there are things wrong, but let's go and create the right things. And I know that a lot of times people say, "Oh, it's easy for you to say." It's actually not easy for anybody to say. In fact, the hardest thing to say is that, hey, listen, go and do something which you truly feel intuitively is right. And okay, if you feel that it's your turn to protest and go out on the street, do it. But you know what? If you actually feel like you can turn that energy and turn it into some kind of a creative process, wow, I think it's kind of like Monsters Incorporated. Don't scare people into collecting energy, but actually
it's hard to do it.
Make them finally laugh, and everybody's kind of, you change the environment, with laughter. You change the environment with love. You change the environment with actually not giving up. And yes, maybe it's being naive and kind of people say like, oh, be realistic. Well, I'm sorry, I don't subscribe to that view of being realistic. In fact, my reality is there's a slogan for this new album of mine, Nordic Escapes, and it's called Perception is Reality.
We'll get to that. By the way, we're going to try to get live questions from Facebook. So if anybody's on Facebook watching and you have any questions for Kristjan, please type them down. We're going to try. We never did this before, so we'll try to have them moderated and sent to us. Kristjan, going back to Nordic Escapes. Nordic Escapes. You released this album this week on Spotify. The link is right there below me or below us on your playlist. You decide to
That's actually tomorrow. It's not this week. It's tomorrow, August 7th.
So there's a couple of songs already playing on Spotify. I know because
those
I listened to them.
Those are singles.
The singles are out, but the album releases tomorrow. You decide to release the album exactly in the middle of a world crisis, both during protests going everywhere and when we're locked down. You're in Italian. I'm here in Toronto, and it's hard to travel and to move around. How did this influence your work, and how did you move forward to creating all of this while in the middle of the pandemic?
Well, look, I mean, obviously, I didn't create it during the pandemic, but the pandemic kind of showed up, and actually, that concert that you just showed a small clip of with Bastille was one of the last things that we did in the beginning of this year, and that was a real live concert with real live audience and in a real fantastic hall.
At the
And
Philharmonie in
and
Hamburg, which
and
it's
it is kind of unbelievable, actually, the huge change that has transformed the world to a place which, in my opinion, is kind of well, it's kind of confused, but it's somehow kinder, in the sense that, I mean, at least people are trying to kind of help each other who never have helped each other before. Um, there is a lot of anger, obviously. There's a lot of confusion. I mean, these are all the ingredients that are required in order to kind of have somebody else kind of take control of the situation, make everything good, you know. But I I think that this is exactly the time for us to realize that, wait a second, all of those things which have been kind of taken care of for us are actually our own responsibility.
is this
If we,
is this going to change classical
it,
music? Is this going to change? Like
I
we have
think
an
this
immediate
is
change
gonna.
right now, but is this going to be
I
sustainable?
Well, I don't know about sustainable. I think that humans are so creative and innovative in every single way that there's a solution for every problem, not a problem for every solution. Just like Einstein said, you know, keep those people away that have a problem for every solution, and actually go and seize the moment, seize the date. I mean, this is really kind of a carpe diem type of a moment
I'm not looking away.
where
I'm looking at the questions that they're sending us.
where people should realize that we create our own reality every single moment. I mean, we're nothing but a quantum field that's walking around, and actually, either we choose to accept our fate, or we create our fate, and that's a matter of perspective. There are different fates to be had, and look, I mean, my road hasn't always been kind of blissful. I mean, the reason why I made this album is actually to tell a story of probably the most significant kind of highs and lows that I've actually had in my life. I mean, I wouldn't have actually been able to uh, express myself in the way that I did if I didn't have uh, sometimes suicidal thoughts. You know, if I wasn't in complete euphoria sometimes, if everything was kind of like bland, or like if it was all like sunlight all the time, then actually we're not made for that, because I mean, there is night and day, there is yin and yang, there's, you know, the tides, and we have emotions, and, you know, there's the various seasons, and we all, you know, adhere to that. We have to just recognize that we are part of nature 100%. All of what's happening right now is also going to come and go, but what we create will stay, and what we create is actually completely up to us. I think we should bind together. For example, I'm extremely proud of the Estonian way of handling this crisis, because actually we kind of we're in it together. You know, nobody was kind of like, oh, you know, I'm kind of like, you know, go to hell. You know, actually we were in it together. We kind of realized that, okay, if we want to beat this thing, then we're going to stay at home. And if we do need to go out, we're going to, you know, be smart about it, not kind of be weirdos. So what this crisis has actually, and when I say weirdos, I don't want to be kind of said like he said I'm weird or something. No, not. I mean, what that means is that, you know, just use your common sense and actually do what you think is right. And sometimes people are so kind of just anti everything that they're anti even common sense, which doesn't seem kind of really right to me. And so the numbers in this country actually completely disappeared up until recently, when the flights and the borders kind of started to reopen, and now we also have a few cases again, and actually those cases are rising. So I think that in a way, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania are kind of, it's a kind of a row of countries that are in somewhat of a bubble, because somehow, at least from my perspective, people are able to work at home. People are able to distance themselves socially, not because they want to, but because it was the smart thing to do. And look, I mean, concerts sometimes are, or mass gatherings, yes, are actually the places where things spread around, and we have to acknowledge that, and the music industry will change, you know. That's why we're doing this project with Baltic Sea Philharmonic, you know, a musical chain, where hopefully we're going to be able to open this up to the whole world to actually join our creative process after we have created a few examples where we can actually, like I said, start creating stuff together, which is actually going to be significant, monumental, emotionally appealing, and will withstand the test of time. And we can do from home. It's corona proof. But after a while, whether there's a vaccine or whether there's some other quick tests or something, concerts will resume, not necessarily maybe according to the same type of factory system, the subscription system, which has, in my opinion, kind of impeded creativity for a long time. But it will resume. Something will take its place. There are many different ideas. People aren't kind of sitting around, kind of waiting for Godot, so to say, you know. And I think that we have to bind not only us Estonians here in the Baltics and Finland. As a world, we have to bind together and actually help each other out. This is the time, you know. Not kind of say like who has the vaccine, how much am I going to charge for it. This is the lowest form of egoism that I can actually just even think of. I mean, what are we talking about here? This is like, do we want to live on this planet, or do you want to leave? I mean, this is actually our choice to us, because nature is going to take over. It'll gladly kick us out if we don't want to stay here. So, like, if we kind of, if anything has been good in this corona crisis, it has made people have the perspective of consciously realizing that our life is fragile. That
I want to.
consciousness. Wait.
Yeah.
Our
I'm waiting. I'm
consciousness
waiting.
is something that is going to either consciously decide to actually have another construction which is acceptable for us, or it's going to just kind of sideline us, and nature will take over, and there maybe become some other form of life. You know, who knows? But frankly, I think that if you're able to understand that all of this bickering and elections and, you know, power games, that's actually not power at all. That's some kind of fictive fictive kind of play on people's emotions to make us not great and not powerful and not people who truly should be 100% in charge of their own destiny. And that's actually why this album is so important and very personal to me, because actually, like I told you in the beginning of this conversation, I've been always kind of handed a path. Somebody's been guiding me, but this was actually a conscious decision to do something where I have taken all of those different tools and elements that I've collected of experiences, emotions, etc., and I've gained some kind of baggage, which I've kind of sorted through, and now I'm presenting as a story of a journey, which I think isn't only my journey. it is actually many, many people's journey, and I hope that this becomes one of those albums which people can truly use as kind of the turning point for them, or a an arrival of an understanding to a certain place, an emotional um, home, which people can actually find in themselves and realize that, wait a second, this life is pretty awesome, and let's live it to the full potential.
I want to go to present one of the pieces, Nebula. But before we go, I want to say that I've had the privilege, real privilege, of living with you part of this journey. We've both gone through the highs and lows of life together, I think. I've seen you, having the best and not the best, and you've seen me also not at my best, and the days when I was not feeling great about, even doing MusiCafe. You were the one who called me and said, "Al, you have to get this going," and I mean, we're there. So because we've lived this together, I really, it's a privilege. I want to show everybody the trailer for for Nebula. So here it is, Kristjan Järvi. So there it is, the first piece to be released on the internet. Fabulous compositions.
Well, that's just a little mini teaser, So actually, those were two segments of 2 tracks that were run together as a video right now. First is the original piece Nebula, which was recorded with David Nebel and actually written for him. And we recorded this last year, or a year and a half ago now, in London with the London Symphony Orchestra. And then I have had the privilege of recording a whole album with Robert Koch, whose stage name is Robot Koch. And I invited him here to Estonia, to Tallinn, and we recorded a whole new project with him called The Next Billion Years. And what I've really kind of realized in this project with him, that he's kind of like my soul brother. We completely click on the level of science and emotions and music and physics and metaphysics, and it is something which led us to then take this piece Nebula, which is cosmic in origin. It's kind of an unattainable, beautiful, imaginative thing, a cosmic cloud, and then he remixed it. So both of these appear on this album, and actually what we had planned and what we would have already been performing is a joint project called A Billion Escapes, actually, which is a combination of his music and a combination of music, our music. My music. creating this kind of billion escapes from his next billion years and my Nordic escapes, billion escapes. So hopefully we're going to get this off the ground at the end of November in Estonia. And that is a great hope of mine, that this will happen and that he will be able to come back again to Estonia. And if Robert, you're watching, thank you so much. You are a complete genius.
From the, like some of the works I've seen that you've performed are really amazing, and one of them is not yours. When you did your version of Swan Lake, I was like, it took me by surprise, because you do this kind of thing. What you do with Nebula, you did it to Swan Lake, a piece that has been around for 100 years.
Well, there, yeah, I mean, I love Swan Lake too much for it to be just kind of left in the repertoire of ballet, and I what would be called a kind of remixed Swan Lake, but actually not electronically. I did it acoustically. I created my own dramatic symphony, and actually just in that same vein, we're going to have a new dramatic symphony of Tchaikovsky appear very soon in October on Sony, and it's Sleeping Beauty, just the same way, reimagined. It's a little bit rewritten, a little bit reorchestrated, condensed, not 3 hours, but 75 minutes, and that's going to be with Baltic Sea Philharmonic. So I'm actually very excited for that.
You always have one amazing project after the rest, and I after the next, and I wish I had, the world was a little more open, so I could go, as we had planned to be in Tallinn. So maybe in the next Estonian Music Week we'll get together there and see everything. I have a lot of questions coming in, so I want to show one more piece, but let's take a few of the questions here, if you don't mind, from our viewers. Do you have a favorite piece on this album, and why would that be your favorite piece?
Well, it's difficult to say what my favorite piece on this album is, but I think maybe Frozen Tears is one of my favorite. It's extremely personal. It's filled with nostalgia and lots of pain, actually, but nonetheless lots of hope as well. And because tears are just that, they're kind of moments frozen in time, which you don't really want to thaw, so to say. You just kind of want to leave them in the past, and you've had that experience, you've learned from that experience, and you've moved on. So that's definitely one of my favorite tracks. So well, check it out tomorrow.
Tomorrow on Spotify. Link is down there. I guess it's very important that all of those experiences, like the lows, you take it as an experience and keep it with you all the time to grow.
Well, look, I mean, I would say I keep the low with me all the time. No, actually, I try to get rid of the low, but I do acknowledge that. I mean, basically, if I hadn't experienced the low, then I wouldn't have enough depth, and that's actually why people say, "Whoa, that's deep." That's actually true, because I mean, you can't talk about something deep if you haven't actually had the insight, so to say. I mean, how deep in the recesses of space can you actually see? And if you can actually think on the level of infinity, then we can start a very good conversation.
I've lived through so many things like you, and that's why I like you as a person, and I like you as an artist because you bring all those feelings out within me. More questions. Question from a Baltic Sea Philharmonic principal. Hey Kristjan, when we're gonna play Le Sacré with Baltic Sea Philharmonic?
You know, if it was up to me, we actually have played Sacre, but it was a long time ago. It was in one of our formative years as Baltic Sea Youth Philharmonic, and but I know what they're asking. They're actually asking about when are we going to memorize the Rite of Spring like we did Firebird. And actually, I would do it tomorrow, and it would be great to, just have that in our vision. And look, if the collective will of our players is actually strong enough, this will happen much sooner than we think. So keep on keeping on.
I saw the premiere of Firebird. We recorded that in Merano.
That's right.
By memory, very very complicated. When people see it, still, we released it almost 2 years ago. People still ask me, how is that possible? Like, how did they do this?
Yeah, but look, I mean, I think also a lot of people, in my opinion, don't really. I mean, let's remove ourselves from the classical music field, and we play Firebird as an orchestra that let's say wrote this piece. I mean, as a band, let's say, just theoretically. I mean, would anybody say that then? I don't think so. So I think that the intricacy of playing from memory is actually overemphasized for the uninformed. It's actually impressive for people who don't believe in their own ability. And I think that, yes, it is impressive if you think about the fact that the construction of our normally accepted parameters of doing work don't allow that. So that means, like a regular symphony orchestra, to make this a project and memorize and pick it up like this, it doesn't fit into their routine. But it's not impossible. I think every orchestra in the world can do that. I think every student orchestra in the world can do it. But we have to change the way that we think. I mean, our priorities have to change. Our insights can't be measured to impress others. We have to impress ourselves. We have to be satisfied with what we want. And I think that in Baltic Sea Philharmonic, we're creating this form of a systemized, methodic way of actually almost like a new way of living, according to Baltic Sea Philharmonic. And I think this way of living isn't actually a new way of living. It's just a contemporary way of living that doesn't adhere to the same routines that every single orchestra, which is subsidized or even unsubsidized, adheres to. And I'm not saying that what they are doing is bad. I'm just saying that there's so much that can be done, which is not trying to fit in. And like I talked about that container in the beginning, everybody's kind of shoved into that container, and then they're kind of put in line, like containers on a train, they go all in one direction. For me, that's not my idea of a good time. So I think that if we think about truly what is possible, basically there's nothing that is not possible. So come on, if somebody listens to this and is not a Baltic Sea Philharmonic person, please take a look at our documentary, which is called Nordic Pulse. I mean, I truly think that a lot of change has come and started from the northern hemisphere, kind of here, especially in these lands of Scandinavia and the Baltics and Northern Europe. And and this is actually our territory, the Baltic Sea. This sea gives us all of our life. It binds us together. It makes us actually one geographic unified group. I mean, that is our blood, which runs in our veins. I mean, yes, we have 10 different countries, but that's 10 different countries according to some kind of political scheme, which actually is only good for who? I guess not for people, but I guess for making maps and for I guess delegating authority, and I don't even know what it's good for. But I know that the Baltic Sea is our source of life. If you see this film, see how those people from different origins and different backgrounds and different social statuses come together and achieve great things. And I think this is a allegory, maybe a metaphor for the rest of the world. We're all brothers and sisters, and I know that people are going to say, oh, he's some kind of like hippie. I'm not a hippie. I'm actually somebody who's a complete realist, and I think that everything is possible. Just like I said in the beginning of the movie, I don't think people have given up hope, but they don't believe that everything is possible, and that's actually a fact. Everything is possible.
Another question from the Baltic Sea Philharmonic. By the way, everybody should watch that film, Nordic Pulse, by David Donnelly, and all of the performances by Baltic Sea. You will be very, very, very happily surprised if you haven't seen them before. It's a lot of fun. They have their YouTube channel. From Baltic Sea Philharmonic, when are we going to have our own rehearsal or concert place, perhaps in Estonia?
You know what? I am 100% sure that we will, but the timeline is something that if we truly prioritize, we can actually get this done sooner than we think. It's just, look, it's a matter of prioritizing things always. So if we want to achieve something, either what's more important for us, to play Red or Spring from memory, or to build a concert hall, or having our own rehearsal space. I think if we set our sights on one thing and really say, okay, within 3 months we need to achieve this, we can achieve this. But then we need to actually make a very concerted effort in order to achieve this. Because if we wait for somebody else to come in and maybe see how good we are, and oh my God, they deserve a concert hall, that's never going to happen. So it's actually us. We have to actually do it, and we have great people in our team and our gang, which is a fantastic office of fantastic people in Berlin, and they are all for it. But we have to then actually say that's what we want first.
Well, it would be great if it happens in Estonia. I mean, you and your family in general.
Frankly, I wouldn't think. I don't think that I would want it to happen anywhere else. I would love to have it in Estonia.
I was going to say, you and your family are great promoters of Estonia. Yeah, you've taken me to Estonia 2 or 3 times already, and it's it's a great place to visit, and it's probably a great place to live. It's something to consider. So I wouldn't see it happening anywhere else either. That's
well.
That's
you know what? I have to say that a lot of these things, I mean, we're talking about Baltic Sea Philharmonic all the time, and I love them, and they're an extension of my physical and energetic body, and I think that every single person there is just a piece of gold. The thing which is actually driving a lot of this is a certain idea of idealism. We need to be idealists. We should never give up on our personal ideal. And if we learn something from somebody else and through our experience, we should incorporate that idea into that ideal and grow that ideal. And actually, look, Sunbeam, my production company, is a company that actually has no employees, and it is a company that operates on the basis of empowerment, that gives everybody who's more or less working on the same project all over the world to come together and work on something together, right? I I mean, whether you're like a doctor or psychologist or like, cab driver, like I don't know, whoever, florist, everybody re- who hears, let's say, Baltic Sea Philharmonic and sees like, wow, it resonates with me. Hears Robert Koch's music and says like, wow, that ensemble Nordic Pulse, which is again, it's like a smaller form of Baltic Sea Philharmonic, like a commando group. Wow, the way that you guys communicate, express yourself, and also the music that we collectively make. If any of this stuff resonates, whether you're lighting designer, whether you're from Symmetrica, whether doing film, or fantastic people like Johnny Klimek, for example, one of my closest collaborators, who I love very much, has written incredible soundtracks for movies from Run Lola
Run,
Run
Lola, run.
to yeah to Babylon Berlin now, and Sense8 and Cloud Atlas, etc. All of these people are actually all working on the same thing, but there's no connection point. And that connection point is actually idealism. And if we find a community of idealists that can actually perpetuate more of this yes, what's your best skill, and what's your best skill, and what's your best skill, and okay, let's put those things together, and actually, even not on a particular understanding of I need your skill and I need your skill, and not like this, but actually, what is your skill, so we can actually put together a project and use our skill set to the best possibility to complement ourselves. Now that's Sunbeam, okay? And from this now has grown a lot of this self-motivated kind of initiative taking, which has created the relationships that I have with Max Richter. It's created the relationships with Modern Recordings and Robert Koch, and this album, and actually even the way that Baltic Sea Philharmonic operates, and the creation of a group called Nordic Pulse Ensemble, right? Which is kind of a localized group of players from Baltic Sea Philharmonic, and all of those people. I hope actually there will be many other companies and enterprises that will be like Sunbeam, created by those people who also want to become a connection time, and not in the matter of competing with each other and being better than each other, but actually complementing each other. And that's for me probably the number one goal of actually my whole entire existence. If there is anything to be achieved in this world, it is actually to unify the human organism and actually lift it, not not as a naive ideology and kind of goodness and everything. No, but as a form of protest. Let's lift it. Let's lift everything by creating. Because actually, if we don't look, I mean, what is a? I mean, yesterday I was on a cliff overlooking a bank onto the Baltic Sea. There's these little plants that are actually driving a wedge between these massive boulders, and actually breaking the rock in half. But it's just a small flower, and some weeds and stuff. But the boulders already, like, you can see that this has been happening for the past, like, I don't know, several hundred or maybe 1,000 years or something. But at one point, that little flower is actually going to break that huge boulder, which usually requires a lot of this kind of jackhammering to actually remove, right? And force comes actually in many ways, and in what we do, it comes in actually delicately, actually, and but at the same time very effectively initiating change.
A couple of more questions, then I want to show another clip. Let's see here. This I never asked you, but we went out for dinner many times, so I didn't have to. What are your 3 favorite dishes?
That's very okay. it's really changing all the time, and it depends on what mood I'm in. But I would say that um, any pasta carbonara type of thing, I'm pretty, I'm down with that, you know.
Yeah.
So that is very good. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of my heritage, but I love pea soup. I don't know why. Like green peas.
Hmm.
I love pea soup. Split pea soup. I love it. You know? Then, actually, it's a little bit cleaner. I mean, something like oh, of course, I love Chinese food. No, there's great Chinese food out there also, and I love sushi. But that's already four. That's
Yeah.
Wait a second.
We've had
Okay. So I
sushi.
would put sushi. I would put sushi on top before the Chinese food, but not always.
I, you know what? We had in Italy, you were conducting Santa Cecilia. We had sushi. We didn't have pasta carbonara. Maybe we made a mistake right there.
I know, but that's the big because we wanted to be like contra. We wanted to like have sushi in Italy. Yeah.
And you were conducting the orchestra there. Stefano Bolani was playing piano, and if I remember properly, you were playing Gershwin, and the
That's correct.
trombonist came to you, and it's one of the great Kristjan Järvi answers. He said, "You're conducting too fast," and you told them, "I can't play all the notes," and you just said, "It's fine, just play the good ones." It was like such,
Well,
and it was full of energy. It was really so fantastic.
no, but in a way, I mean, what a lot of people in that kind of answer don't understand that there's a certain technique which actually makes your ear believe that all the notes have been played. And I mean, jazz musicians and of the such, in I think also in the Baroque field, you know, they that's why jazz and Baroque are very similar because it's involved with improvisation and certain type of reliance on being together with the bass line and chordal movement. But what I meant was actually ghost some notes so you don't have to bust your chops. And sometimes some people need more translation than than
Than that,
than others.
right?
Yeah. So yet again, this comes actually from our way of being kind of groomed into doing the correct things. And I have to say that that unfortunately in this world, most of the people who actually try their damnedest and hardest to do the right thing are usually shafted, and that's something which I recognize, and I've actually even experienced myself, it's unfortunate because people who are street smart are kind of a little bit clever and stuff who aren't exactly following all the rules all the time and who aren't playing all the notes all the time, they managed to kind of skip to the front of the line, and we don't understand why that happens because that's not right. And but we have to realize that that is what happens and bind together, not to actually stop those people from actually skipping to the front of the line, but actually find out how is it that they've skipped to the front of the line, because actually I'd like to do that too. And because those people are actually not bad people, they're smart people and they're very,
Yep.
very humble human beings.
I want to ask you two questions that came also on Facebook. But before we do that, let's play. This is really the world premiere of Nordic Escapes. Nordic Escapes. That was really the world premiere. I'm very, very thankful that you decided to bring it up here with me. I'm very thankful, really. A couple of 2, 3 more questions. These are not my own. This came from Facebook, so we gotta please the crowd. This comes from Marcel Prost. I hope I'm saying it correctly. If you would have the chance to meet one legendary historic person, who would that be?
Probably Nikola Tesla. I want to know really what's going on in that guy's mind. I mean, why is he so unbelievably scary to some people and so brilliant to others? And what was he really trying to do? And actually, why can't we kind of just think on that same level? So, if we is there something missing? I mean, are we? Was he just crazy, or was he just so unbelievably brilliant that like we can't even see it? So that's my probably number one. I really want to ask him kind of what made him tick. Kind of were those radio transmissions that he heard before the radio was invented? Were they really from Mars? I mean, yeah.
2 more questions. Are you any plans to bring? I suppose it's Nordic Escapes to London after the pandemic.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I would like to tour with this project as much as possible. In that video, short video that you saw actually 2 of the most incredible Estonian musicians. One of them, singer Liisi Koikson, who is featured on 4 tracks. I mean, 3 on just doing, well, not just doing vocals, but playing a very important vocal role. But actually then on 1 track called Runic Prayer as a singer of the track, actually as a song singer. And I mean, she's actually one of the most inspiring people with an incredible voice, fantastic capacity to create and interpret things, and be such a fantastic addition to this band. So basically, there's the Nordic Pulse Ensemble, and there's kind of the Nordic Escapes band of soloists which come out of that ensemble. And also, you saw a bass player there. His name is Mikkel. Melgand in Estonian, so I know it's a little bit hard to pronounce, but Mikkel Melgand, and he is also probably one of the finest musicians, not only bass players, but just one of the best creative souls that I've actually come across. And I want to take this group of soloists and incredible doers, so to say, to tell that journey and actually grow this story into a, from what now is maybe a journey of small poems and short stories to actually a whole novel. And that novel is something that we're building together and creating together, because it's not, as I said, it's not my own story, it's actually all of our story. And I feel like what I want to tell is something very personal, which everybody holds usually hidden, but I want to expose it. And I think it's time to expose what we truly hold inside of us, and I hope that at least in some way I can be a vehicle for that with this album and this form of expression.
The last question. We've gone double overtime now. I've never done an interview more than double overtime.
That means that sounds like my style. My style of rehearsing is double overtime.
It's really overtime. It's like when you paraded out of the concert house in Berlin and kept on playing once the concert was over. Down on the streets and got 3 times the audience from inside. Outside, it was another experience. If you want to, they're asking us if you want to stop conducting big orchestras and just do your own projects. That's the first question, and because they wouldn't. Some people wouldn't like to see you do that. They will miss you. Me too.
No, absolutely not. This is no. I mean, no, who said anything about stopping anything? This is completely, in fact, quite the opposite. In fact, I want to do more of this with bigger orchestras. But in order for me to do more of this with bigger orchestras, the bigger orchestras have to understand what I'm doing. Because when I start doing this with bigger orchestras, and I have tried to actually initiate projects like this, with all sorts of festivals, with actually another wonderful orchestra, MDR Symphony Orchestra, which I was chief of, and Tonkunstler Orchestra before that. When you try to initiate stuff from within the institution, they feel like it is so uncomfortable and somehow like not understandable that it kind of creates tension where actually there shouldn't be any, but that's a normal human response to something that is unknown, you know. Like for example, if Steve Reich all of a sudden started to write his pieces for symphony orchestra, and it was like 1960s, 70s, even early 80s, they would say like, "Listen, man, like, why don't you just do that with your ensemble and come back to us? Like, we'll like, don't call us, we'll call you," type of thing. You know? I have experienced that kind of situation, not nearly like that, but I mean, that's why all of these guys like Steve Reich, Philip Glass, they've had their own ensembles. I mean, it is a concept, it's an idea, something which has to be somehow brought forth. People have to understand it. And then, wait a second, we want it. All of a sudden, we want it. And it's not because they didn't want it before, but they just had to actually see what it is that they're getting. And that's actually, it's unfortunate, but that's how the classical music business works. And I'm therefore also kind of a black sheep in the sense that I don't really consider this classical music, but it is music that is written down. It is half electronic. It is somewhat improvised. Because of my great collaborators, I am able to achieve the way to have all these strands of information kind of interwoven and actually come to a convincing whole. When people understand that that's actually what we want, and it's not accidental, kind of haphazard, like, oh my God, that was cool because it happened. Then people in orchestras will have the understanding that, wait a second, that's actually what he wants, and wait a second, even though the note there, which is in my part right in front of me, and he wrote a G, but I played an A flat, and it sounds like a minor second, and it's a dissonance. It's probably going to ruin that diachronic chord, but he just told me he likes it. So, wait a second. So I can do that, and he wants it. He's not just saying like, yeah, play whatever, I don't care. So and we have to actually go through all those steps again, because like in the current situation, if that would happen, they would say like, oh, he didn't hear it. No, actually, he doesn't care, or he doesn't care to care even. And that's actually completely the opposite of what I want. Actually, I'm very particular with what I want and what kind of style I want to get. But I want people to make the mistakes in order for us to know whether we have missed on something good, because maybe there's something good in that good bag of goodies, And if we don't actually make that mistake, and maybe if we don't find out that, wait a second, that really suits this particular situation really well, we're never actually going to evolve and make great things. So actually, education is all about making mistakes.
I keep getting questions, I don't want to skip this one because they said please. So here we go with a please question. If Kristjan, and I know where this question came, not who posted, but I know that some people always ask this question. If Kristjan would meet with God, what's the first thing he would say?
I would say, is this for real? So, um, uh, probably that's what I would say, because actually, I mean, the concept of God is a pretty lofty one, and it means that you believe in a creator, you know, and the 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 reason why I would actually ask him, is this for real, is because I think that we are the creators, and and we as a collective innate whole of all of these different electrical impulses and what have you that you actually think that we're putting out there, or at least we think that we're putting out there, are creating this thing called collective consciousness and actually creating our reality. So, I mean, I think whoever is controlling that stuff gives kind of our understanding that, wait a second, somebody else is controlling that stuff. But actually, no. I would actually say to God that maybe not only is this for real, I said, are you for real? And he can interpret that any way he wants.
We'll leave that there. Kristjan, it's a great pleasure to have you. I appreciate that you decided to release your album with me. It's something that goes deep into my heart. But most importantly, I'm thankful for your friendship over the years. We've both gone in quite a journey. We've been all over the world, and it's always great to be able to appreciate you, to appreciate your art, your feelings, and you've made everybody who hears you conducting or playing makes us grow. So thank you very much for that. I want to ask you before we leave, how's your family doing? How's Annalise? How's the baby doing? And your dad and
Annalise is fantastic. Little Elsa has all her antennas out. She has a hairdo which somehow is phenomenally reminiscent of a mohawk here in the middle, and literally it's like this. And they're both doing really well. Thanks for asking, and also thanks for your kind words. I mean, you've been extremely generous, and thank you so much for all of your support and help in all of my endeavors. I wish everybody who has listened tonight a magnificent evening and day and weeks and months and years, and actually keep your eye on the ball, so to say, because sometimes we get distracted and we lose sight of ourselves in this whole chaotic mess of stuff that's actually happening. But actually, we are the creators.
And keep your eyes on Spotify tomorrow, the release of Nordic Escapes. Fantastic music. Kristjan, thank you very much. Before we leave, I just want to tell everybody that next week I will be traveling to Wyoming. We will be doing a special recording of the Grand Teton Music Festival with Donald Ronicles. We have quite an incredible lineup there. We will be traveling with a lot of care, and we're going to be very, very safe. But I appreciate when people hear that we're traveling, that they're caring about it and making sure that we will be back very safe back here home. And I can't wait to be back in Estonia with all our friends there. Kristjan, thank you very much.
I can't wait until you're back in Estonia too. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.